This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Maybe you're listening on my website at henrywalker.org under audio messages, or maybe you're listening at podpoint.com/Henry Walker, or maybe you're listening on my YouTube channel, New Life Revival International Henry Walker. I want to start a new message today talking about change is coming. Are we ready? But let's go to the Father in prayer first. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. Help people to open up their spirits, Father, and not only receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. Let's go to the book of Daniel. Just go to Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, right before Hosea and Joel. The book of Daniel, talk about change is coming. Are we ready for change? Are we ready for the Father to bring us into purpose and destiny? It could happen overnight. It could happen so quickly. He talks about in Isaiah, can a nation be born in one day? Can he raise us up in one day? He sure can. So don't concentrate on what's happening right now. Concentrate on the King of the universe, that he's able to change our lives in one day to usher us into purpose and destiny, to do an assignment that nobody else in the world can do. Be ready for change. Be ready for the new level. Be ready for the new assignment. Be ready for the Father to use you like he never used you before. And again, it could happen so quickly. Book of Daniel, chapter 1. In Babylon was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah among those of the Jews who were in Babylon. In verse 8, in Babylon, the king wanted children in verse 4, in whom was no blemish, but well-favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning in the tongue of the Chaldeans. Now among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They changed the names into pagan names. But in verse 8, Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. There's a message on my website, henrywalker.org, under written messages. Wine is a mocker. Read it. It's a very important message. It clears up any misunderstanding about the word wine in the word. In the Old Testament, the same Hebrew word is used for wine and unfermented wine, grape juice. The same in the New Testament, the same Greek word for fermented wine and unfermented wine, or grape juice. You really have to read it very carefully as to what the Father is speaking in the scriptures, to whether it's intoxicating wine or grape juice. And here, he didn't want to touch the king's wine. He spoke to the prince of the eunuchs in verse 12, prove us, your servants, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. No wine. He did. The prince of the eunuchs said, okay. In verse 14, so he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. It's very important, 10. Remember, the number 10 in the word, or a number that's divisible by 10, means that the Father is ready to cut something or somebody off. So their not wanting to eat of the king's meat or drink of his wine is cut off. It's never going to happen again. In verse 15, at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. In verse 17, and as for these 4 children, the Father gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And they came before the king at the end of the 10 days in verse 19, and the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. In verse 20, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. One time for every 10 days. And this is very important because the Father saved all of their lives by revealing a dream to Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream nobody could interpret, and he's going to kill all the magicians, the astrologers, and the sorcerers, if nobody could tell him not only the interpretation, but the dream. In verse 14, they wanted to kill Daniel, and Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael with the others. In verse 14, then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which has gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. In verse 15, he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. And Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went into Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they prayed. In verse 19, then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in the night vision. The night seasons are so very, very important. From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Remember, the day runs from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. are the 12 hours of the day. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. are the 12 hours of the night. Yahshua mentioned about the 12 hours of the day. So at 6 p.m. starts the day. We have to be on the Father's timing. So sometime after 6 p.m., the Father's going to draw you into praying for that day that you're in. And remember, on Saturday at 6 p.m. starts the week. And we talked a lot about the Sabbath. From Friday 6 p.m. to Saturday 6 p.m. Sometime during that Friday 6 p.m. to Saturday 6 p.m., he wants to draw us into his presence, refresh us, and give us more power going into the week again, which starts on Saturday at 6 p.m. I have a book at the bottom of my message page called Noon. It's free. The written message page. And it talks about the hours of the day when the Father moves the most, the feast days, the real beginning of the new year. And since Yahshua is a Jew, was a Jew, always will be a Jew, we need to study more about the feast days because they're all about him. This ministry goes back to our Jewish roots in Yahshua, where he taught the apostles and what the apostles taught others. We don't go back to the ceremonial washings and the cleansings and the 600 and some laws that they have. No, we go back to Yahshua, what he shows us. And Yahshua shows us what he wants us to learn from our Jewish roots. It's important. And remember, in those night seasons, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. is the first watch of the night. 9 p.m. to midnight is the second watch of the night. Midnight to 3 a.m. is the third watch of the night. 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. is the fourth watch of the night. That's when Yahshua walked on the water. And the Father may wake you up during that period of time to pray for somebody that's in the darkest part of their night, needing help. That's 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Back in verse 19, then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in the night vision. Then Daniel blessed the Elohim of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of Elohim forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. And he thanked the Father for making known to him the dream and interpretation. In verse 24, then Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. And he went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. And he did. He told him the dream and interpretation. And look at the change that happened in Daniel's life, and Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael's life. In verse 48, then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Just be ready. Be ready for him. The main requirement for the Father's change is to surrender everything to Him, especially your flesh. Allow Him to mortify the deeds of your flesh, come into your spirit, make you more like Yahshua, and bring the fruit of the Spirit out of your life. Love, joy, peace, longsuffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Then you're on that road of sanctification, and every day He wants to work on you. He works on us every day to make us more like Yahshua. If there's pride or jealousy, He'll just take it out of our lives when we say, okay, take it out, Father. And what He is doing, He's getting us ready for heaven, getting us ready for the rapture. In verse 49, then Daniel requested of the king, and he said, Azariah, Mishael, Hananiah, over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat at the gate of the king. Look at the change, because they refused to go along and eat the king's meat and drink his wine. Remember, the word says, wine is a mocker. Study my message. It's based on the word, line upon line, precept upon precept. And research what one glass of wine can do to the brain cells. Research my message. Study my message. Wine is a mocker. At some point, you don't want anything in your body that's going to interfere with you hearing from the Father distinctly. In chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold. And everybody was supposed to bow down when they heard the music. And anybody who did it would be put into the burning, fiery furnace. And Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael refused to bow down. They were taken into custody. And the king said, you have another opportunity to bow down when you hear the music. He said, no. If you put us into the fiery furnace and the Father rescues us, we're still not going to bow down. And if He doesn't rescue us, of course we're not going to bow down. So Nebuchadnezzar was really upset. He made the furnace to be heated 7 times more. And the people that threw Mishael, Azariah, Hananiah into the fiery furnace were burnt up. And then, of course, Nebuchadnezzar and the others see 4 men in the fiery furnace. And one is Yahshua. He's the 4th one in that fiery furnace. Any situation you're going through right now, He's right in the middle of it, working for you and with you. And He wants to prepare a table for you in the midst of your enemies. He wants to show up and show off for you. He's going to show your enemies what He can do on behalf of one person who stands up for Him, who belongs to Him and serves Him. Right in the midst of your enemies. Just receive that today. Again, just make sure you surrender everything to the Father and follow Him. And He'll always show up and show out for you. When we submit ourselves to Him, every aspect of our lives, He really takes care of us. We abide in the secret place of the Most High. And no weapon formed against us shall ever prosper. And every tongue that comes against us in judgment, we shall condemn. Because our righteousness is of the Father. Yahshua, who knew no sin, became sin that we might be made the righteousness of the Father. So, more change for Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. Verse 29, therefore I make a decree, Nebuchadnezzar did, that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other Elohim that can deliver after the sort. Then the king promoted Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael in the province of Babylon. More change. Stand up for Him, and He'll bring positive change into your life. In chapter 6, verse 1, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Here's that change for Daniel. It's that Hebrew word chen, C-H-E-N, It's the favor that Father put on Daniel. He's ready to be promoted. Are you ready to be promoted? Are you ready for that new level? Are you ready for that new level that leads to the rapture? The rapture is not for everybody. The road to heaven is straight and narrow, and few are found on it. The road to hell is wide, and many are found on it. Make sure there's nothing in your relationship to the Father through Yahshua that is of any pagan origin and is not in the Word. Because we want to worship Him in spirit and truth. Not some Constantine doctrine, but what's contained in the Word. And again, as I mentioned before, with the feast days, every feast day is about Yahshua. He fulfilled every feast day with the exception of the last three, which is the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles, or Sukkot. Study the feast days. Again, my book Noon talks about those feast days. I have messages on my website at the feast days also. I also have another book on my website under written messages called Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? Explaining the so-called mystery of the Trinity. They're both free. So here the Father is ready to promote Daniel, and his enemies got in the middle of it. And he said the only way we can come against him is in his relationship to Elohim. So there's a decree signed that nobody could pray to anybody but the king for 30 days. And Daniel, he was so steadfast in Yahweh. Verse 10. When Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house. He didn't wait at all. And his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his Elohim as he did oftentimes. He wanted to make sure they heard him. And the king had to put him in a lion's den. But this is all set up for change for Daniel. The Father's setting up things in your life for change, for the better. Just make yourself available by surrendering everything to Him. He knows without Him we're a mess, but He wants to make a message out of our mess. Let Him work on you. The flesh is so strong. We need the Father to control the flesh. And incidentally, if your flesh tries to act up and give you any thoughts of worry, fear, anxiety, any impure thoughts, just say out loud, Yahshua, I thank you for that crown of thorns on your head. That was for me. That means my mind is covered by your blood. I only think your thoughts and give those thoughts to the Father. Cast them all upon the Father. Let Him deal with those thoughts. It's like a tennis match. Give them to the Father. In verse 20, and when he came to the den, the king, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel, and the king spoke and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living Elohim, is your Elohim, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver you from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My Elohim has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, forasmuch as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. The king commanded, and those people that wanted Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den, he had them thrown in, and before they ever hit the ground, the lions ate them. Verse 25, then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before the Elohim of Daniel, for he is the living Elohim, and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and the earth, who had delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Change and more promotion for Daniel because he stood on the Father's word. He didn't bow down to anything in the world. We need to stand strong against what's happening in the world and stand on Him and His word. Stand strong. The Father is going to show up for us and free us up, take us into rapture alive, and the tribulation is going to start. We cannot be controlled by anything or anybody in the world. Because why? Because greater is the Father, the King of the universe, in us than anything or anybody in the world. Remember, the Father controls everything and everybody. Everything was created by Him and for Him, and by Him all things consist. So what's happening in the world has to play out. The Father's trying to reach so many people before the rapture door closes. And people are finding out there's hardly anybody that they can look for help. And so eventually, hopefully, they'll turn to Yahshua. He got His arms wide open waiting for them. And so many people are looking for other ways that they can lean on other than Him, His name, His blood, and His word. But not so for us. We're standing strong. As for me and my house, we are standing with the Father, by the Father. He upholds us. He strengthens us. Go to the book of Joshua with me. Just go to the left. Yeah, Ruth, Judges, Joshua. Right after Deuteronomy and Numbers. Joshua. Joshua chapter 14. We're talking about change. How suddenly change can take place. Suddenly. In Joshua chapter 14, talking about Caleb. 45 years ago, Moses sent out 12 spies. 2 of them were Joshua and Caleb, and they're the only 2 that came back with a good report. And Caleb had stood on Mount Hebron 45 years ago. And now they're dividing up the inheritance in the new land, and nobody wanted Mount Hebron because they said the enemy was too strong. But in Joshua chapter 14, verse 7, look how Caleb was waiting 45 years, and here comes that change. Maybe you've been waiting for a promise from the Father for years and years and years, maybe even 45 years. But the Father can show up so suddenly, so quickly, and deliver that promise to you, maybe when you least expect it. And this message today is telling you to expect it. Again, if you surrendered everything to the Father, get ready to receive His long-awaited promises. And talking about long-awaited promises, in 1 Kings chapter 9, to stay in Joshua, Solomon, in rededicating the temple, asked the Father that His name, His eyes, and His heart will always be in the temple. And in 1 Kings chapter 9, the Father answered and said, my name, my eyes, and my heart will always be in the temple. And in John chapter 10, starting in verse 22, at the Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah, Yahshua is walking into the temple. And here's the Father's name, eyes, and heart walking in the temple, just like He promised Solomon. So the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah, is something that Yahshua kept in the month of December. It's something that we need to keep. And the Jewish people give their kids 8 days of presents on Hanukkah. Yahshua kept it. Why aren't most believers keeping it? Why are they keeping a holiday that is pagan-based? Yahshua was born on Passover, died on Passover. He was exactly 33 years old. So that's a time of long-awaited promises, because there was a long time between when the Father said that His name, His eyes, and His heart will always be in the temple. And here, His heart, eyes, and name was walking into the temple on the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah. It's very important. Again, in Joshua chapter 14, verse 7, 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of Yahweh, sent me from Kadesh Barnea, this Caleb speaking, to spy out the land. And I brought him word again as was in my heart. In verse 9, and Moses swore in that day, saying, surely the land wherein thy feet hath trodden shall be thy inheritance, and thy children's forever, because you have wholly followed Yahweh, my Elohim. Now behold, Yahweh has kept me alive, as He said, these 45 years, even since Yahweh spoke this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now I am this day 85 years old, and yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war both to go out and to come in. Now give me this mountain. If so be Yahweh will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as Yahweh said. And Joshua gave him Hebron as inheritance. In the next chapter, his whole family got blessed. In verse 19, his daughter asked him, "Give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a southland. Give me also springs of water." And he gave her the upper springs and the nether spring. The change. We talk about change. Another thing is the name Yahweh is the Father's name. It sounds so strange to so many believers because the Constantine doctrine tried to wipe out the name Yahweh. Yahweh is an action verb. If you want more miracles in your life, more of his presence, use his name Yahweh. It means I am that I am. Whatever you need him to be, he will be. And Yahshua is Yahweh our Savior. It's the YAH, that's the family name. Yahweh, Yahshua. Praise him by his name, Yahweh. Use his name as a powerful weapon. And use his blood as an offensive weapon. If you're going to minister to somebody before you ever get there, ask the Father to apply his blood to the meeting. And before we get back to this message, I want to remind you that this is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception. We believe that the Father is the agent of conception. And just some facts, if you're not aware of these facts, that a baby in the womb, the baby's heart begins to beat around 18 days. And around 4 months, the baby's heart is pumping about 25 quarts of blood per day. This is a life, not a tissue. And most scientists believe that life begins at conception. And the College of Pediatrics believe that life begins at conception. So we want to pray for the babies in the womb. Father, touch the babies in the womb. Bring them to a full birth, Father. And we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if any of you out there had an abortion, repent, ask the Father to forgive you, and go on and follow him into purpose and destiny. So again, we're talking about change, how quickly change can come. Remember Joseph, the Pharaoh had a dream, and nobody could interpret it. And they brought Joseph out of prison, shaved him, new clothing, and he interpreted the dream. And the Pharaoh made him second in all of Egypt to him. Look at the change that happened to Joseph. Maybe you feel like maybe the Father has forgotten about you. But no. His timing is impeccable. Just watch him show up and show out for you. I want to remind you about a ministry that we have in Nassau, the Bahamas. We have been feeding the poor. And if any of you want to contribute to helping the poor in Nassau, the Bahamas, you can donate by going to my website, henrywalker.org, and click on the donate button, or go to podpoint.com/Henry Walker and click on the donate button. Everything is tax deductible. This is a 501c3 organization, New Life Revival International. And if the Father puts this in your spirit to donate, it'd be so great. And if any of you have any questions, any praise reports, you can email me at contact@henrywalker.org. I'll be so glad to hear from you. And if you enjoy these podcasts, tell other people about these podcasts, share, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to next time, this is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than anything or anybody in the world.